Where have you been? What kind of disgraceful behavior is this? Neka yelled. You're no better than a street girl. Ogechi was stunned, but she didn't have the strength to explain what had truly happened. Her stepsisters, eager to humiliate her, had already twisted the story. Once upon a time, there lived a happy and wealthy family in a peaceful town. The family was headed by Obinama, a wealthy businessman who was well respected in the community, and his loving wife, Amaka. Together, they had a precious daughter named Ogechi, who was the joy of their lives. Their home was large, beautifully decorated, and full of warmth, love, and laughter. Obinama worked hard to provide the best for his family, and Amaka ensured their house was always filled with happiness. Ogechi, who was as kind-hearted as she was beautiful, was surrounded by all the comforts a child could ask for, and she adored her parents deeply. Life seemed perfect for them, and they were the envy of many. However, their perfect world began to crumble when Amaka fell gravely ill. Her sickness came without warning, and though they consulted the best doctors and tried every medicine, her condition worsened. The illness drained her strength day by day, and soon the once lively Amaka was bedridden. Obinama was devastated, and little Ogechi was heartbroken watching her mother suffer. Despite all the love and care from her family, Amaka's health continued to decline, and after a long battle with her illness, she passed away. The loss of Amaka left a deep void in Obinama and Ogechi's hearts. Their home, once full of laughter, became a place of sadness and mourning. Ogechi clung to her father for comfort, but nothing seemed to fill the emptiness left by her mother's death. After months of grieving, Obinama found himself overwhelmed with loneliness. As much as he loved Ogechi, he felt the absence of a partner to share the burdens of life with. His friends and family encouraged him to remarry, believing that a new wife would help heal his broken heart and bring happiness back to his home. Eventually, Obinama married a woman named Neka, a widow herself with 2 daughters, Chika and Ada. Neka seemed kind and loving, and her daughters were close in age to Ogechi. At first, everything seemed perfect. Ogechi, Chika, and Ada quickly became friends. They played together and enjoyed each other's company. Obinama was pleased to see Ogechi smiling again, and he hoped this new chapter would bring peace and joy to their lives. Neka, too, appeared to be a caring stepmother. She treated Ogechi well, and the family started to rebuild the happiness they had lost. The girls went to school together and were inseparable, often seen laughing and playing in the garden. Obinama felt he had made the right decision in marrying Neka, believing she and her daughters had brought life back into his home. However, as fate would have it, tragedy struck once more. Obinama fell seriously ill, and this time, no amount of wealth could save him. After weeks of being bedridden, he too passed away, leaving Ogechi devastated once more. She had now lost both of her parents, and the world felt even darker and more frightening. In her grief, Ogechi hoped Neka and her stepsisters would be there to comfort her. Unfortunately, things were about to take a turn for the worse. In the days following Obinama's death, Neka and her daughters revealed their true colors. While they had seemed kind and loving when Obinama was alive, their attitudes toward Ogechi changed immediately after his funeral. Neka no longer treated Ogechi as part of the family, but rather as a burden she had to endure. Chika and Ada, who had once played with Ogechi as sisters, began to mock and insult her. They called her an orphan, reminding her every day that she had no one left in the world. Ogechi, who was still grieving the loss of her father, was now faced with cruelty in her own home. Neka made her do all the house chores, turning her into little more than a servant. She was no longer allowed to attend school, and her beautiful clothes were taken away. Life became miserable for Ogechi. She scrubbed floors, cooked meals, and washed clothes, while her stepsisters lived a life of luxury, wearing fine clothes and attending school. They would laugh at her, enjoying the fact that she had been reduced to a servant in what was once her own home. Neka treated Ogechi harshly, giving her the hardest tasks and making her sleep in a small, cramped room at the back of the house. Ogechi's heart ached with loneliness and sorrow, but she kept silent, knowing there was no one left to defend her. She missed her parents terribly and often cried herself to sleep, praying for a miracle that would take her away from the cruelty she faced every day. As the years passed, Ogechi grew into a beautiful young woman despite the hardships she faced. Her stepmother and stepsisters, however, grew more jealous of her beauty and kindness. Though they treated her terribly, Ogechi remained kind-hearted and never once retaliated. This only fueled their hatred, and they began plotting ways to ruin her life completely. Chika and Ada came up with a cruel plan. They decided to trick Ogechi into going out with them to a nightclub. Their intention was to get her drunk and humiliate her by making sure she ended up in a compromising situation. They pretended to be friendly toward Ogechi, acting as if they wanted to make amends for all the years of mistreatment. Ogechi, still hoping for a better relationship with her stepsisters, accepted their invitation. That night, they took her to the club, where they forced her to drink more alcohol than she could handle. Ogechi, not used to such places or behavior, quickly became intoxicated. Chika and Ada paid a man to take her to a hotel room, planning to ruin her reputation for good. However, what they didn't know was that a mysterious man had been watching them. The man noticed how Chika and Ada were treating Ogechi and decided to follow them. When he saw what they had done, he intervened, paying the man they had hired triple the amount to leave Ogechi alone. The mysterious man stayed with her in the hotel room to make sure she was safe. The next morning, Ogechi woke up with a throbbing headache. The world around her seemed blurry, and as her mind tried to grasp what had happened, panic began to set in. She was in a hotel room, but she had no recollection of how she got there. The last thing she remembered was the bright lights of the nightclub, the loud music, and her stepsisters pushing more drinks into her hands. She quickly sat up, her heart racing as she looked around the unfamiliar room. She saw a man sleeping on the bed next to her, a handsome young man with dark hair and a strong, muscular frame. Ogechi's mind raced, trying to make sense of everything. Who was he? What had happened? As she stood up, the headache hit her harder and she staggered, barely able to hold her balance. Her heart pounded in her chest as she rushed out of the room, desperate to escape the panic that was rising inside her. She dashed down the stairs, her shoes clattering against the floor, and made her way out of the hotel. The cold air hit her face like a splash of water, and it took a moment for her to focus. Still trembling, she started to walk home, her body numb and her mind in a whirlwind of confusion and fear. As she reached her doorstep, her stepmother greeted her with a slap, not with concern, but with scorn. "Where have you been?" "What kind of disgraceful behavior is this?" Neka yelled. "You're no better than a street girl." Ogechi was stunned, but she didn't have the strength to explain what had truly happened. Her stepsisters, eager to humiliate her, had already twisted the story, telling Neka that Ogechi had gone out, drunk, and slept with a man. The words stung like 1,000 bees, and Ogechi felt more alone than ever before. She had lost all hope that anyone in her family would understand. Months later, Ogechi has been working at a jewelry shop that her stepmom had opened for her sisters that one quiet afternoon when Ogechi found herself back at the jewelry shop, trying to distract herself from the emotional turmoil of the past few days. She wasn't in the mood to deal with customers, but she had to. As she arranged the delicate necklaces and earrings in the display cases, a man walked in, his presence immediately commanding attention. Ogechi looked up briefly, noting his strong build and confident stride, but she quickly turned her attention back to the job at hand. He moved toward the counter and began to inspect a few items. He picked up a gold bracelet and studied it. Ogechi had seen him before, though she couldn't quite place where. Something about his confident yet mysterious air intrigued her. When he approached the counter to pay, Ogechi felt an odd sense of recognition, though she couldn't explain why. As she stepped forward to assist him, their eyes met for the first time. Time seemed to slow as the world around them faded. Her breath caught in her throat as she recognized him. The same man who had been with her that night at the hotel. He seemed to recognize her too, but neither of them spoke for a moment. There was an intense silence between them, as if both were trying to understand what had happened between them. Toby, as he introduced himself, spoke first, his voice low but warm. "I've been looking for you for months," he said, his eyes not leaving hers. Ogechi's heart skipped a beat. How could he have been looking for her? She barely knew him. But there was something comforting in his presence, something that made her feel safe despite the chaos in her life. Toby smiled gently, his eyes softening. "I couldn't let you leave without knowing the truth," he said. "What happened that night was not your fault." For a moment, Ogechi was speechless, struggling to process what he was saying. Her thoughts were a blur of emotions, confusion, embarrassment, and a glimmer of hope. Here was someone who didn't judge her. Here was someone who wanted to know the truth. As Toby paid for the bracelet, he paused and looked at her, his gaze lingering for a moment longer than necessary. "I'm not leaving until I know you're okay," he said softly. Ogechi, still unsure of what to say or do, simply nodded, her mind swirling with questions. Who was this man? Why had he been looking for her? And most importantly, why did she feel like she could trust him?